welcome back into another episode of Loaded Box Vids. As always, I am your host, Mikey Ostrowski, joined by my good buddy, Dylan Mazzola. Dylan, I ask you this every single week. How you doing?
All right. I'm not trying to say the same thing. Well, I think I'm just, flabbergasted to be here. And pumped to talk football.
It kills me every time we do these intros, man. And we're always doing it's just, I would feel weird if we didn't start it off with, this is my good buddy, Dylan. How you doing? Oh, I'm excited to talk about football today. So,
I mean, what else do I say if I'm making a video about football?
That's true. That's true. So I too am excited to talk football today. More specifically, I'm excited to talk rookies today, something that every Dynasty player is absolutely obsessed with this time of the offseason, especially for the next few months. Our focuses are going to be set on the Najee Harris's,
plural.
The JaMarr Chases, the Trevor Lawrences, all of those guys. We are going to be hyping them up. And so the video that we have for you guys here today, we simulated a mock draft. I did not take a single pick. Dylan did not take a single pick. We let the computer pick everything. And we are going to be highlighting our top handful of picks, hypothetical picks, we should say, based on where these players ended up. So Dylan and I are going to go back and forth, taking turns on who we're going to pick. So I'm going to go ahead and start us off. Pick number 1 overall in our Dynasty rookie mock draft. I took Najee Harris, who got drafted in the first round to the Arizona Cardinals. For those of you that kept up with our previous videos, we went over Kenyon Drake from the Arizona Cardinals and how we think he's going to be leaving. He's going to vacate a really good opportunity there in Arizona. And Najee Harris is arguably the best running back in this class. He is good at catching the ball, not great, but good. And I do think that while I do think he would surrender some work to Chase Edmonds on third downs, I do think we would see more of Najee Harris on third downs than we might actually expect. So Harris, for me, he's my number 2 overall player on my big board, actually right behind Travis Etienne, who I didn't opt to take here because Etienne ended up in Pittsburgh in this mock draft. And I definitely like Najee Harris's landing spot a little bit better. My mantra is, with running backs, since you're probably only going to have them for a relevant 3 to 4 years, you draft for the situation. One thing Dylan and I learned over the last couple of years is that when it comes to wide receivers, you kind of draft more for talent than
you ignore the situation. You click the button.
Exactly, because we almost got ourselves in trouble with AJ Brown a couple of years ago, and we never want to see that again. But there you have it. Pick number 1 is Najee Harris of the Arizona Cardinals. Pick number 2 goes to Dylan, and he selected Devonta Smith, who was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles in this mock. You want to explain that one a little bit?
It was a little bit of a homer pick, although Smith's going to go in the top 4 in every consensus rookie draft when it actually happens, unless he goes to some terrible team or falls. And the reason why I went with this pick over Travis Etienne is because Mikey just said it. He in this mock draft, this hypothetical draft, he went to the Steelers, and the Steelers have several running backs on the roster, and I didn't like that clusterfuck to put it bluntly. So Smith is, depending upon who you're talking to, either the best receiver or the second best receiver. And I just went with the fact that my Eagles have no receiver help really in real life. So it's a great landing spot. And if they do roll with, in real life, Hurts, I think that'd be good. So Smith just made sense. I went wide receiver heavy in this, and you'll see that as we progress. I took a different approach.
Yeah, and I definitely like Devonta Smith. He's personally my wide receiver 1, even over JaMarr Chase. I know that's a little
it's like
spicy for some people, but yeah, I think he's back and forth. But anyway, I really like the pick at pick number 2. I'm back up again at pick number 3 overall. I mentioned him that he's my number 1 overall player in this draft, and that is Travis Etienne. As I mentioned before, he went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dylan's right. They have a massive running back room right now between Connor, Benny Snell, Jalen Samuel,
McFarland, right?
McFarland. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on there, but if they want Travis Etienne, they're going to have to spend high draft capital. And they did take him in the first round of this NFL mock draft that the simulator spit out for us. You don't take a running back in the first round to not use him as at least a borderline workhorse. Etienne has some of the best hands out of the backfield in this entire class. He is a great runner in between the tackles. You know, a lot of people have compared him to Alvin Kamara. Obviously, that's more of a ceiling comparison than anything, but I can definitely see it. There are a lot of similarities in the play. A lot of questions surrounding Pittsburgh, but I think at the very least, you know, Travis Etienne's going to come out. He's going to make a case as, you know, the top 2, top 3 rookie running back by the end of this year. And yeah, I mean, it's not my dream landing spot for Etienne, but getting drafted in the first round to a team like that, he's going to see a ton of workload. And yeah, I took him as my number 2 overall player at pick 3. So I have the top 2 running backs, and according to our mock draft here, you're going to have the top 2 receivers because pick 104, you took JaMarr Chase, who went in the top 5 picks of the simulation, and he went to the Miami Dolphins.
And I love that, which is also why I took the receiver. Also, you obviously took the second best, well, second or first, depending upon your opinion once again, but you took one of the most talented players. And I like the landing spot in this hypothetical, this mock. I mean, the Dolphins don't have that much. Devontae Parker is not getting younger. Also, his health is somewhat of an injury concern. Who's the rookie?
Preston Williams.
Yeah, that's what I was also thinking of. He can't stay healthy, unfortunately. They finally have a tight end, but the point is JaMarr Chase would slot in perfectly. It would give help to Tua. I'm not going to even try to pronounce his last name, unlike you. But it would give him a nice weapon for the foreseeable future. And from a dynasty perspective, I had to smash on that. Normally, though, I would not pass on Travis Etienne, but for the sake of this hypothetical, I went two wideouts.
For sure. And one of the cool things with Miami is that according to this mock draft, and we'll bring him up later because he does get drafted in the top 8, spoiler alert. But Miami goes out and they grab Javonte Williams on day 2. And I mean, he's going to transform that offense. I know Myles Gaskin and Salvin Ahmed did perfectly fine for them last year, but I mean, with adding JaMarr Chase and Javonte Williams in one draft, I mean, that offense could be completely different. So no one's going to argue taking JaMarr Chase in the top 4. No. I think people would argue if you took him anywhere after that because he shouldn't still be there. So I do really like the pick. I'm going to move on. I'm going to take my first receiver at 105, and I'm taking Jalen Waddle. Now, I'm not a big fan of his landing spot. He did land in Detroit. But this is the whole AJ Brown situation for me. Yeah, you know, Jalen Waddle, if he stayed healthy all of 2020, there's a very real possibility that he could be the consensus wide receiver 1. Devonta Smith may very well not have won the Heisman because Jalen Waddle was commanding a large target share. And actually, when both of them were on the field, Waddle technically did have better stats in the majority of the games. So I do really like him. While I don't like the situation and him having Jared Goff throwing to him for the foreseeable future, you know, we quickly learned with AJ Brown a couple years ago, it takes 6 or 7 games for a wide receiver situation to completely change. And while Detroit doesn't have a guy like Ryan Tannehill as their backup, you never know what's going to happen with wide receivers. You draft for talent, not landing spot. And Jalen Waddle is absolutely oozing with talent. He's my number 3 overall ranked wide receiver. So taking him at 105 seemed like a no-brainer to me.
Also no other targets on that offense. So
exactly. So, I mean, he's going to get all the wide out targets. Hawk's going to get all the inside targets. It's going to be a pretty good balance, I think, with Jalen Waddle. But your pick at 106 is extremely exciting. But I hate the landing spot. I genuinely hate the landing spot. I'm honestly curious as to why the mock draft decided to do this to us and do this to the world. But Kyle Pitts went to the New York Giants, and you selected him at 106. So tell us about that.
I'm a big Kyle Pitts fan. I think he's going to go I know he's going to go by that pick in most like actual drafts when the NFL draft happens, barring insane fall off or injury. I just think talent rises I think wide receiver, kind of like how you just draft for talent. I think tight end's the same thing. Like people were kind of high on Mike Gesicki before he went into, was drafted, and he kind of like got soured on some people. But look at this season; he finally had the quote unquote breakout season. So tight end is a position that you've told me, and I have also researched that you don't base upon the first year. It's more of a year by year basis. You look for year 2 and year 3. So that was that kind of pick. That was like literally a stats pick. But also, side note, Evan Ingram has hands that are bricks or like blocks of butter. So
that is facts.
Kyle Pitts probably would take over as tight end 1, hypothetically speaking, for the Giants by like week 4 or 5.
Yeah, I can completely see it. And with the wideouts that they have on that offense, I mean, they could definitely roll out with the whole 2 tight end set, and I think they'd be perfectly fine. And you're right. I think Kyle Pitts would almost immediately take over as the tight end 1. Tight ends, obviously, out of every position in the NFL, they do take the longest, or at least among the longest, to develop. But Kyle Pitts is a freak athlete. People don't even have comparisons for the guy at the tight end position. I mean, he's that unique. I've compared him to the Julio Joneses of tight ends.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is that high praise? Yeah, but I think it's completely deserved. I really like the pick, regardless of the landing spot.
Yeah, the landing spot's kind of, I mean, the quarterback play is what scares me. But yeah.
It happens, but you know what? Kyle Pitts is that good of a player to where I think landing spot shouldn't matter too much, and the talent's going to show out. So I definitely really like taking him at 106. It's a little ballsy, but not too ballsy, and I like that. So moving on, pick 107, I'm up. And this is going to surprise a lot of people because I actually ran a poll on Twitter on how people would feel if Terrace Marshall Jr. went to the Baltimore Ravens. And most people absolutely hated the idea. But I took him as the wide receiver 4, 107 overall, after he landed with the Baltimore Ravens.
I liked it, by the way, just saying.
I love it because Terrace Marshall, he is this big physical guy. He reminds me a lot of a quicker version of Alshon Jeffrey coming out of college. And Alshon Jeffrey, his rookie year, he didn't do too much, but his sophomore year, he came out, had 1,500 yards. I actually just did a write-up over on the loadedboxpodcast.com. I did a player profile for Terrace Marshall earlier this week, or technically this is coming out the following week. So last week, I should say. But either way, I mean, he had, I believe it was 23 touchdowns over his 19 games in LSU over the last 2 years. He actually had more touchdowns in the year without Joe Burrow than he did with Joe Burrow. Granted, JaMarr Chase wasn't on the field for his junior year, but the fact that Marshall was able to do that, taking on the wide receiver 1 role, was pretty impressive considering that LSU's offense completely fell off and they lost Joe Brady out there. So, I mean, that was pretty big for them. But nonetheless, I think Marshall's going to come out. He's going to add a completely new dimension to that Baltimore Ravens offense. It could completely transform, and Lamar Jackson could become more of I don't want to say better quarterback because he's not a bad quarterback, but he could be more known for his arm after this year if you give him a red zone, big bodied target. So, I do think it's a bit of a risk reward pick here. I don't love the situation, but I do love it a lot more than most people do.
No, it's definitely smart. I think when we did it, I recalled liking it then as well because Lamar doesn't really have that many weapons in terms of wide receivers.
Yeah, so I think that's a pretty solid pick. But here we are, 108. You are on the clock, and we mentioned that Javonte Williams went to Miami, and that's exactly who you took here. I picked 108. So walk me through this Williams pick.
Fins up, just a closet Dolphins fan, I guess, according to the draft. No, I didn't have a running back yet, so I kind of felt like the pressure, and a couple of them are already gone. And not knocking this class because there's always going to be that Antonio Gibson, even that Kamara a couple of years ago when he was drafted. No one thought he'd be the way he is now. There's always that guy that goes under the radar and pops off, and everyone's like, wow, I'm an idiot. Why didn't I take him in the 3rd round? But then you're like, oh, well, or 1st round. So point is, like, I had to take a running back. I like the landing spot. You said it earlier. The running backs operated fine there, and Gaskin's not mad. But it was more of a sufficient kind of thing. Like, I don't think there wasn't like elite running back play. And I think he could potentially up the game and offer like extreme fantasy value. I'm not going to say right out the gate, but maybe, because Gaskins and Ahmed until last season were unknowns. I mean, wasn't Gaskins undrafted?
I think he was drafted in like the 6th or 7th round. He was like a very late pick.
So that's what I'm saying. In the mock, it had them drafting him and investing in him relatively early. So if you draft a running back in the first 3 rounds, it shows that you like the running back. Look at the Rams. Everyone clowned them. They didn't have a first round pick. They drafted Cam Akers in the 2nd round. Cam Akers took a while to develop, but now it's paying dividends.
Yeah, no, I think Williams is a great pick. And to be honest, in a lot of drafts out there, running backs always fly off the shelves. There's a part of me that honestly wouldn't be surprised especially depending on if he lands in a good landing spot like Miami. I think Javonte Williams could make a case as a top 3 or top 4 overall pick in a lot of rookie drafts out there, because running backs are so highly coveted. I actually just ran a mock draft for our Dynasty league earlier, and he ended up being a top 5
Keep talking. Pick. I have pick number 4, so this is good for me.
Exactly. So nonetheless, I do really like the pick. And before I move on, I'm just going to mention every single player on this list, except for one, and we'll explain that when we get to it. Every single player on this list was either a day 1 or day 2 pick in this simulation. Some of the guys that fell to the 3rd day actually really surprised us, and we'll kind of mention those guys at the tail end of this anyway. But moving on, Rashod Bateman is my pick at 109. He went to the New York Jets. I'm going to keep this one a little short with him because, to be honest, I'm not a massive Rashod Bateman fan myself. I have him as my wide receiver 8 in my Dynasty rankings currently. But a lot of people are super hype off of him, and I'm kind of hearing the same thing. There's nothing that he does exceptionally well, but there's nothing in his game that isn't good, if that makes sense. Like, he kind of seems like jack of all trades, master of none. And you put that on the New York Jets, he could actually do a lot of damage, because not only do they not have a master anywhere on that offense, they don't have a jack of all trades anything on that offense. I do think he could completely transform it. If he does go to the Jets, admittedly, he probably will move up my wide receiver rankings. I'm having a hard time putting him anything more than 7 or 8 right now, but we'll see what happens. Rashod Bateman is a very popular top 5 wide receiver for a lot of people out there. So I took him as the 5th receiver off the board, and I'm mostly happy with that one.
I like it.
So you are up pick 10 overall, and you take another New York Jet here. Day 2 running back pick, Michael Carter, the other North Carolina running back. So walk me through that one.
Simple. Look at the Jets roster, like you just said. Look at their running backs. It's Ty Johnson, who has kind of bounced around a little bit. No knock against him. Granted, he has played well and his stay in New York, but it's a short sample size. I don't think you're going to invest in him. And then the other running back they have on the roster was from Florida, 4th round pick. Was it like?
Dude, I couldn't even tell you. They had a revolving door this year.
That's my point. And they had Frank Gore. So yeah. Does that explain it? Maybe it's too early. Maybe it's a reach. But if the kid's half decent, he's going to see touches from the first game.
Yeah, and I think taking the 4th running back off the board at pick 10 overall, I think that's very reasonable, especially given what's left on the board. I mean, this is a very deep class, but if you have a need at the running back position, there's really only 5, maybe 6 guys that I would actually go after that are going to come in and make a difference on your team. So I, to be honest with you, if Michael Carter fell at pick 111, I would have probably taken him. So I like the pick. But speaking of 111, I took the wide receiver 6 of the day, Tylan Wallace, and he went to the Chiefs. I really, really, really like Tylan Wallace. I mean, he's in my top 10. Admittedly, he is not my wide receiver 6, but if he ends up in Kansas City, he very well could be. I've compared him kind of to a Tyler Lockett type of player, and that is something that I think would really thrive on the Chiefs offense.
Yeah.
Tyler Lockett is not, he's definitely a vertical threat, but he doesn't only beat you with your speed. He is very good route runner, and he is one of the league's, in my opinion, most underrated receivers out there. Yeah. He would only be, granted, he would be behind Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce in the pecking order, but when would he ever have any real coverage on him? Because everyone else is worried about Hill and Travis Kelce, and then Mecole Hardman's also stretching the field. Tylan Wallace, this is one of those situations where I like the talent, but I love the landing spot. And I know we don't want to draft too heavily landing spot dependent for wide receivers, but if you absolutely love the landing spot and the talent is there, it's a no-brainer. So Tylan Wallace to the Chiefs. He's my last pick of the first round. And you have one more pick in the first round, pick 112. I knew that you were going to do this because you just can't let a quarterback not go in the first round, because that's just what you do. Should be to no one's surprise that the Jaguars at pick 101 take Trevor Lawrence, which is who Dylan took here. I'm not going to ask you too many questions because we all know Trevor Lawrence, but
I don't even have to talk about it, dude. You go on the pick 13. It's Trevor Lawrence.
All right, we'll move on. Obviously, this is not a super flex draft, or else Trevor Lawrence would have went number 1 overall.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're right. In most drafts out there, he's not going to fall into the second round because there will be someone that needs him, and they're going to have to take him.
If he falls to the second round, he's going 201 or 202 at the very. And I don't even see that. He's not falling past 201 probably in like 95% of all drafts.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we'll move on. And I take another wide receiver. As you guys know, this draft class is very wide receiver heavy. And I took Elijah Moore, who went to the Tennessee Titans. And it's kind of funny that we're talking about him now, because right before we hopped on this video, DJ from the Loaded Box was actually messaging in our Twitter group chat saying, hey, has anyone studied up on Elijah Moore? And I was like, oh yeah, me. I really like him. I've compared him more to Emmanuel Sanders. Before we hopped in, DJ compared him either to Jarvis Landry or Steve Smith. I think Steve Smith is way too high praise for this guy, although I do like him.
Though too.
Yeah, I mean, Emmanuel Sanders is pretty good comparison, I think. He's kind of on the smaller side, unlike Emmanuel Sanders, but he could be really good in the slot. He's slippery. He's a really good route runner, in my opinion. And ending up with the Tennessee Titans, AJ Brown's going to take away all the pressure. They're likely going to lose Corey Davis to free agency. There's a decent chance they'll lose Jonnu Smith as well. Elijah Moore could come in and be the legitimate number 2 option in that offense. And while I do think he's not NFL ready, it's going to take him a little while to adapt to the NFL. I think he's going to work perfectly fine in Tennessee. So we'll move on, and you actually got a steal at 114, and that's Rondale Moore. But there's a reason why you got him this late. And it's because he went to the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, if you're a Bears fan listening, A, sorry, B, sorry. No, the landing spots. If we knew what their quarterback situation was, Mikey's right. It probably went a little earlier. I don't have to talk about it much. I think Moore is one of the more talented receivers in the entire draft class. We said not to draft it based upon situation, but when your team literally does not have a quarterback, like it's kind of scary.
Yeah, and the fact that the Bears don't really have anything going for them outside of David Montgomery, which is weird because if you said that a year ago, you would have been kicked. But yeah, I mean, Rondale Moore, very talented. He's personally not my cup of tea. I do have him ranked lower than a lot of people. But on the surface, getting him at pick 14, I'd say is a steal. So hats off to you. I'm up pick 15. Now this is a bit of a reach on my part, but I absolutely love the player and I absolutely love the landing spot. So I went for it. We're only doing the top 18 picks and I had to make sure I got him on here. Brenden Jordan, tight end, went to the Arizona Cardinals. If you were following along with the past videos that Dylan and I did for Free Agency Frenzy, I kept bringing up how much I would absolutely love for a tight end to end up in Arizona. Brenden Jordan, outside of Kyle Pitts, is my favorite tight end in this class by far. Honestly, if you combine the 2020 and the 2021 draft classes, Brenden Jordan would be my tight end too out of all of those, just behind Kyle Pitts. I think he's got the upside of George Kittle. Genuinely speaking, I really like that. If you want to see more of my thoughts on that, go to our website. I actually did a player profile on him as well, but won't explain this pick too much. Just know that I absolutely love the player. I absolutely love the landing spot. He's going to go out, develop over the course of a season, maybe a season and a half, and then he's going to start kicking ass with Kyler Murray.
Facts.
So now the next one up, this is the only pick out of all 18 of our picks here. We only did a round and a half. This is the only pick where the guy was a day 3 pick. I believe he went in the 4th round, and out of all places, he ended up with the Houston Texans, which is, you'd think, abysmal, but something you like something about Jamar Jefferson going to the Texans enough to where you made him the 5th running back taken.
This one was a complete shot in the dark, I'll be honest. But I just kind of like the fact that the Texans are clearly, I'm believing they're going to move on from Watson and they're going to rebuild. So I just think that he has value. And also the current running back on the roster is not exactly an image of pristine health. So is it possibly a reach or a waste of a pick? Yeah, but could it pay off and end up like a flex play later down the line? Sure. It's a classic dynasty stash. It's, whatever.
And you know what? It's opportunity. And with running backs, especially these depth running backs in a class, all you can really ask for is the opportunity. I mean, Myles Gaskin, we were talking about him. He was a 6th round pick and he got the opportunity. JaMarr Jefferson, he's playing behind David and Duke Johnson, who are both injury prone. There's not a lot going on for that offense. They're going to be trying out a bunch of different things. I totally understand this dart throw at pick 16. I think it's very good. And I think there's a ton of upside that comes with it. So I like the pick.
Thank you, Mikey.
And then the last 2 picks, I'll kind of group them together. You and I can talk about it at the same time. At pick 17 overall, I took a quarterback. Pick 18 overall, you took a quarterback.
Dude, I have a hard on for quarterbacks. That's just what it is.
Exactly. Well, I took Justin Fields, who ended up with the Atlanta Falcons, and you took Zach Wilson, who ended up with the New York Jets. Now, I know we both love both of these guys. I'm more of a Justin Fields guy. I think you're more of a Zach Wilson guy.
Yeah, although I'm actually starting to turn him into a Fields guy, but
yeah, I mean, either way, these guys are both going to do battle back and forth over the next several months on who's going to be the QB2 of this class. Justin Fields has more running upside, I'd say, but Zach Wilson, wait, that's not true at all. Zach Wilson definitely has more running upside. He's so good. He is absolutely incredible. I would say my 2 comparisons for them, I have Zach Wilson as Josh Allen and Justin Fields as Dak Prescott. As I was saying before,
you should know why I took Zach Wilson. I'm like the biggest non-Buffalo Bills Josh Allen fan in the world.
You have him in every single league that I'm in with you. These guys are both really, really talented quarterbacks, in my opinion. Now, obviously, Dak and Josh Allen are both ceiling comparisons, but the hopes are high for both of these guys. I don't think anyone's going to complain about getting either one of them midway through the season.
They'll probably go earlier, by the way, and not most drafts, but I could see them going earlier in some drafts, depending upon needs of the people in your draft.
Definitely a possibility. I mean, I know for myself, we're in our salary cap league. I have Pat Mahomes eating up way too much salary, and if I get rid of him, I have Ryan Tannehill and then Trace McSorley. So you never know. I could be a candidate in the 2nd round to reach on one of these guys in real life. But before we close up the video here, I do want to go over very briefly, don't even want to talk about them, just want to mention them, some guys that could have made this list, but just didn't. So the first 2 that I'm going to talk about, Kenneth Gainwell and Chubba Hubbard. Kenneth Gainwell is actually my running back 4 ahead of Michael Carter, but I couldn't take him because he went to the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yep.
My comp for him is Austin Eckler, and he's actually less BMI than Austin Eckler. So he's not going to beat out Austin Eckler. Chubba Hubbard, sorry, I don't want anything to do with the Patriots. They were also day 3 picks. These next 4 wide receivers were also day 3 picks. Diami Brown, Tamorian Terry, Seth Williams, and Sage Surratt. Yeah, and then we had these next 4 guys. They were day 2 picks. And actually, Kadarius Toney was a day 1 pick. So we completely skipped out on a day 1 pick in the top 18, which is kind of absurd, but neither one of us are high on Kadarius Toney. Sorry for those of you that are truthers out there. I don't see it. He's a gadget player. I don't want him on my fantasy team. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kadarius Toney, Pat Freiermuth, the tight end, and Hunter Long. They all have decent landing spots. Pat Freiermuth went to the Jaguars. I would assume that he would probably go in the next few picks if we kept going. But nonetheless, I'm going to actually put this entire list on the description down below on the video, so you guys can kind of follow along, see where our heads were at and everything like that. But yeah, Dylan, I'm pumped we were able to do this. I'm pumped that we finally get to talk about rookies. And, you know, I said this last week. I have no idea what we're going to do for next week, but hopefully you and I can put our heads together and think of a kick-ass video to bring everyone.
We'll think of something. We're doing this on the fly. The definition of winging it.
we did kind of wing it tonight. We did the draft ahead of time though, which I'm very proud of us for doing that. We were able to save some time there. But nonetheless, thank you guys for tuning in here on the Loaded Box Vids. We really appreciate the views. If you like the video, feel free to like, comment, and please hit that subscribe button as well. If you're not doing it already, feel free to follow me, Dylan, and Loaded Box on Twitter. As always, check out our website, Loaded Box Vids, or loadedboxpodcast.com, for all of our articles, player profiles, rankings, podcast links, you name it, we got it all on there. So for myself, for Dylan, and for Loaded Box, thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.